You think your uncle's fishing stories are wild? Honey, history wrote the book on BS, and it's a bestseller. We're about to unearth 33 hoaxes so mind-bendingly audacious they didn't just fool a few suckers. They had kings, scientists, and entire nations doing the conga line of gullibility. Get ready to question everything you thought you knew about human intelligence. Because today, we celebrate the glorious, jaw-dropping stupidity of the past. This isn't just history. It's a comedy of errors with a body count of common sense. 1. So, 1726 England. A woman named Mary Toft announces she's giving birth to, wait for it, rabbits. Not cute chocolate ones, actual, fluffy, twitchy-nosed bunnies. And the doctors? Did they call for a straitjacket? Nope. They grabbed their notepads, positively vibrating with excitement. One royal surgeon practically wet his breeches, declaring it a miracle. For weeks, Mary was a veritable bunny factory, delivering bits and bobs of rabbit like a furry confetti cannon. The secret to this interspecies miracle? Let's just say Mary had a very accommodating storage facility and a helpful friend with a rabbit habit. When a dude was caught smuggling a tiny bunny to her room, the whole fluffy illusion went poof. Mary fessed up. The medical geniuses suddenly remembered they had other patients, and the world collectively facepalmed. Seriously, how does an entire medical community fall for that? 2. New York, 1869. Some guys are digging a well, and bam! They unearth a 10-foot stone dude, a petrified giant. America collectively lost its marbles. Was it biblical proof? Bigfoot's grandpa? The farmer, Stub Newell, instantly turned his field into a theme park, complete with admission fees. Even P.T. Barnum, the emperor of "Is this real, or did I just have a stroke?" wanted a piece of the giant action. The punchline? It was just a big old rock, carved up by a professional grifter named George Hull, who wanted to troll religious folks and, get filthy rich. It wasn't even a good statue. Imagine a lumpy stone potato with anger issues. But people lined up for miles, proving that if you tell a story with enough oomph, folks will happily pay to believe in a really, really dumb rock. 3. Let's warp to 1835. The New York Sun newspaper decided reality was boring and cranked the fiction dial to 11. They revealed that top astronomer Sir John Herschel had discovered life on the moon. And not just like space moss. We're talking bat-winged humanoids, unicorns prancing near sapphire temples, and beavers who were apparently master builders with a penchant for lunar real estate. The articles, supposedly legit science, spoiler, they weren't, were dripping with such insane detail, people swallowed it whole. The Sun's sales went stratospheric. Rival papers, choking on their own journalistic integrity, started reprinting the lunar looniness. Meanwhile, poor Herschel, actually in South Africa minding his own cosmic business, was probably wondering why everyone suddenly thought he was besties with moonbats. The Sun just shrugged, having already won the 19th century clickbait Olympics. 4. And here comes P.T. Barnum, a man whose motto was basically, why let truth get in the way of a good story, or a pile of cash? In the 1840s, he gave us the Fiji mermaid. Picture a monkey's upper half, Frankensteined onto a fish's tail, then left in an attic to mummify into pure nightmare fuel. That was this scientific wonder. Barnum paraded it as irrefutable proof of merfolk, and the public, bless their naive little hearts, went absolutely bananas. Newspapers shrieked, "Mermaid exists," while more discerning folks probably just wondered why it looked so incredibly, deeply sad. Naturally, it was a total fake, probably stitched together by some bored fisherman with a twisted sense of humor. But it packed houses. People paid. Humanity stared into the abyss, and the abyss had a monkey head and smelled faintly of desperation and old fish. 5. England, 1917. Two young cousins, Elsie and Francis, went, "Hey world, fairies are real, and we've got selfies to prove it." The photos showed them chilling with tiny winged beings that bore an uncanny resemblance to poorly cut out magazine pictures propped up with pins. But details, schmeetails. The world, including Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, yes, the dude who invented Sherlock freaking Holmes, fell for it hook, line, and sinker. Doyle, a huge fan of all things spooky, basically became their PR manager. For decades, these Cottingley fairies were the X-Files of their day. It wasn't until the cousins were practically fossils themselves that they finally spilled the beans. Yeah, it was cardboard. Our bad. Doyle, probably still arguing with their ghosts about the authenticity. Sometimes you just really want to believe in glittery little people, even if they're clearly 2D. 6. Meet John Keeley, a Philadelphia charmer from the late 1800s, who announced he'd built a machine that ran on, well, magic, basically. He called it the Keeley motor, powered by etheric vibrations, and other words he definitely just made up. Investors, presumably after sniffing too much of that ether, threw cash at him like he was giving away free puppies. His demonstrations were pure spectacle, machines whirring, things floating, all without any visible power source. The trick? His lab was a Rube Goldberg contraption of hidden pipes, secret air compressors, and probably a very tired hamster on a wheel. Ask to see the guts? Heavens no! You'll upset the cosmic mojo, he'd cry. After he croaked, they found his miracle engine was just a very expensive, very elaborate con. The only thing he perpetually generated was pure, unadulterated bullshit. 7. October 30th, 1938. Orson Welles and his radio gang decided to give America a collective heart attack. They adapted H.G. Wells's War of the Worlds as a series of breaking news alerts. Martians in New Jersey, heat rays frying everything, utter pandemonium. For anyone who missed the intro saying, "Hey, this is just a play, folks," it was the actual, literal end of the world. People reportedly hit the road, overloaded phone lines begging for help, and probably made some very questionable deals with their maker. While some say the mass panic was exaggerated by newspapers who loved a good scare as much as Wells did, there's no denying it sent a shockwave of terror across the nation. It proved radio could make you believe your doom was imminent, even if it was just some actors having a laugh in a studio. And we complain about fake news now? Adorable. 8. In 1912, an amateur fossil dude, Charles Dawson, found the Piltdown Man in England. The Holy Grail. The missing link. It had a big humanish brain and an apish jaw. Just what British science ordered to prove they were the cradle of humanity. For 40 glorious years, this guy was the rock star of evolution. Textbooks swooned, museums preened. The only teeny, tiny, insignificant issue? It was a total, utter, balls-to-the-wall fake. A medieval human skull cap lovingly glued to an orangutan jaw, complete with filed-down teeth and a nice, old-timey chemical stain. It took until 1953 for science to catch up and go, "Wait a damn minute, this jaw really likes bananas." Piltdown Man. Proving that if you want to believe something badly enough, you'll happily ignore the primate screaming in the room. 9. Picture this. 1817, rural England. A mysterious woman stumbles into town, babbling in a language no one understands, dressed like she just escaped a very confusing costume party. She declares herself Princess Caribou from the exotic, unheard-of island of Javasu, snatched by pirates. The local high society, probably bored out of their skulls, ate it up with a silver spoon. They feeded her, dressed her, and hung on her every made-up word. For weeks, she was the belle of the bizarre ball. Then, plot twist. Someone recognized her. Mary Wilcox, a cobbler's daughter with a flair for the dramatic and an allergy to boring. She'd invented the whole damn thing. Language, backstory, royal pout. And did they run her out of town? Nope. She became even more famous. A true testament to the power of a good yarn and a whole lot of nerve. 10. Oh, the Louvre. So fancy, so cultured. So gullible? In 1896, they dropped a fortune on a stunning gold tiara, allegedly belonging to some ancient Scythian king named Saitapharnes. It was dripping with gold, covered in epic battle scenes, basically the blingiest headgear of 300 BC. For years, it was the museum's showstopper. Then, some killjoy experts started muttering about suspiciously modern tool marks. The real kicker? A quiet goldsmith from Odessa, Israel Ruchamovsky, eventually raised his hand and said, Um, excuse me, esteemed museum folks? I made that. For a buddy. As a gift. Whoops. He even offered to prove it by remaking a chunk. The Louvre tried to bluff, but yeah, their priceless antique was a brilliant, but very, very recent forgery. The silence in those hallowed halls must have been deafening. 11. Shinichi Fujimura, or God's Hand, as he was dramatically nicknamed in Japan, was an archaeological rock star. For years, this guy had an uncanny knack for discovering incredibly ancient artifacts, pushing back the timeline of Japanese history by hundreds of thousands of years. He'd dramatically pull Stone Age tools from the earth, cameras flashing, academics gasping. What a genius! What intuition! Turns out, his intuition involved him sneaking onto dig sites the night before, burying the artifacts himself, and then finding them the next day with a flourish. He was basically the archaeological equivalent of a magician planting a rabbit in a hat, except his hat was the entire nation's historical record. When a newspaper sting operation caught him red-handed, literally burying his discoveries, his divine reputation crumbled faster than a prehistoric cookie. Japan's oldest artifacts turned out to be as ancient as his shovel. 12. Oh, to have been a fly on the wall for the dreadnought hoax of 1910. A group of mischievous British aristocrats, including a young Virginia Woolf, yes, that Virginia Woolf, decided it would be absolutely hilarious to punk the Royal Navy. So they slapped on some theatrical makeup, donned elaborate robes, and presented themselves as the Emperor of Abyssinia and his entourage. And the Navy? They rolled out the red carpet. Full honors, a guided tour of their flagship, the HMS Dreadnought, the most powerful warship in the world. The Abyssinians spoke in a gibberish mix of Latin and made-up phrases like bunga bunga, and the officers just nodded sagely, presumably thinking it was ancient royal protocol. When the hoax was revealed, the Navy was mortified, Parliament was in stitches, and Virginia Woolf probably got some great material for a novel about the absurdity of authority. 13. In the 1970s, the world was captivated by the discovery of the Tasaday tribe in the Philippines, a Stone Age people living in total isolation, untouched by modern civilization. They wore leaves, used stone tools, and spoke a unique dialect. Anthropologists wept with joy. National Geographic ran covers. It was like finding a living, breathing time capsule. Except, it wasn't. Years later, skeptical journalists revisited the area unannounced and found the Tasaday wearing jeans, listening to radios, and generally not looking very Stone Age at all. It turned out the whole thing was likely orchestrated by a well-connected Filipino politician for fame, fortune, and possibly to protect the land from logging. The noble savages were, in fact, just regular folks who'd been convinced to play dress-up for the cameras. Talk about a reality show gone wrong before reality shows were even a thing. 14. Nessie. The Loch Ness Monster. The ultimate, is it real or is my auntie just drunk again? Cryptid. The most famous proof for decades was the surgeon's photograph from 1934, showing that iconic long-necked silhouette emerging from the murky depths. It was blurry, it was mysterious, it was completely fake. Turns out it was staged by a disgruntled big game hunter, Marmaduke Wetherell, who'd been humiliated after a previous Nessie find of his was exposed as a hippo's foot. Yes, really. He and his conspirators fashioned the monster out of a toy submarine and some sculpted putty. One of the hoaxers confessed on his deathbed decades later, but by then, Nessie was a global superstar. The photo, debunked or not, cemented the legend, proving that people want to believe in monsters, especially if they have a good, grainy photo op. 15. The Donation of Constantine was a document that basically gave the Pope a get-out-of-jail-free card for ruling most of Western Europe. Supposedly written by Emperor Constantine himself in the 4th century, it granted the papacy vast temporal power. For centuries, it was the Catholic Church's ultimate trump card in political squabbles. Don't like our authority? Well, Constantine said so. There was just one tiny eensy-weensy problem. It was a forgery, and not even a particularly good one. Scholars later noticed the Latin was a bit too 8th century. Like, imagine finding a Roman scroll that mentions yeet or no cap. It was so obviously faked by someone centuries later to bolster papal claims. It's almost charming in its audacity. The Vatican just sort of coughed and changed the subject for a few hundred years when it was exposed. Whoopsie. 16. Theodore Hook, a 19th century British prankster with way too much time on his hands, made a bet in 1810 that he could make any house in London the most talked about address in a single day. His target, 54 Berners Street. His method, pure, unadulterated chaos. He sent out thousands of letters in various forged names, requesting deliveries, services, and visits. We're talking coachloads of dignitaries, dozens of pianos, cartfuls of coal, wedding cakes, doctors, lawyers, priests, even the Lord Mayor of London himself. The street became a scene of utter pandemonium, completely gridlocked for hours. Hook, meanwhile, watched the glorious bedlam unfold from a rented room across the street, probably cackling into his tea. He won the bet, and also a place in the annals of most epic pranks ever pulled by someone who clearly needed a hobby. 17. William Henry Ireland was a teenage literary forger with dreams bigger than his talent. In the 1790s, convinced the world needed more Shakespeare, debatable, he started discovering lost manuscripts, letters, and even an entirely new play by the Bard, supposedly found in an old trunk. Literary London went wild. Experts authenticated them. The new play, Vortigern and Rowena, was even staged. The only issue? It was terrible. Like fan fiction written by a moody goth kid terrible. During its premiere, the audience started laughing so hard at the awful lines that the play had to be stopped. Ireland eventually fessed up, expecting applause for his cleverness. Instead, he got ridicule. Still, for a glorious moment, he had the entire literary establishment believing Shakespeare occasionally wrote like a total hack. Bravo, kid. Sort of. 18. For decades, intricate crop circles appearing overnight in English fields baffled scientists, inspired countless UFO theories, and probably gave a few farmers heart attacks. Were they messages from aliens, mysterious energy vortexes, the work of hyper-intelligent badgers? In 1991, two jolly blokes named Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley stepped forward and said, "Nah, mates, it was us," with some planks, rope, and a good bit of sneaky late-night stomping. They'd been doing it since the 70s, just for a laugh. The paranormal experts were devastated. The ufologists cried, "Government cover-up." Doug and Dave just shrugged, probably over a pint, having pulled off one of the longest-running, most widespread pranks in history, all fueled by boredom and a wicked sense of humor. Honestly, legendary. 19. The 1990s were a wild time for alien enthusiasts, especially after the alien autopsy footage hit the airwaves. This grainy, supposedly top-secret film showed scientists dissecting a very dead, very gray, very ET-looking creature recovered from the infamous Roswell crash. It was sensational. It was terrifying. It was a bloke in a rubber suit filled with offal from the local butcher. Ray Santilli, the film's promoter, made a fortune. Years later, he admitted it was a reconstruction, with only a few frames of original, and equally dubious, footage. The special effects artist who made the alien even came forward. But the damage was done. For a generation, that wobbly footage of a very fake alien getting its guts inspected was proof that we were not alone, and that aliens apparently had really bad skin. 20. Professor Johann Beringer was an 18th century German academic with a passion for fossils and, apparently, a complete lack of skepticism. He began unearthing remarkable figured stones, Lugenstein, or lying stones, from a nearby mountain. These weren't just any fossils. They depicted lizards, birds, spiders, even comets and Hebrew letters. Beringer was ecstatic. He was rewriting natural history. He even published a lavish book about his finds. The tragicomic twist? His jealous academic rivals had carved and planted the stones to humiliate him. They even put his own name on some of them in Hebrew, which you'd think might have been a clue. Beringer, bless his devoted heart, initially dismissed rumors of a hoax, but eventually, the evidence became too overwhelming. He reportedly spent his fortune trying to buy back all copies of his now infamous book. Academic trolling, 18th century style, brutal, yet undeniably effective. 21. P.T. Barnum, a man who could sell sand in the Sahara, struck gold again in 1835 with Joyce Heth. Who was Joyce Heth? Only George Washington's 161-year-old former nurse, of course. Barnum exhibited this frail, blind, and mostly paralyzed elderly African-American woman who would regale audiences with highly embellished tales of Little George. Was she actually 161? Did she really change the first president's diapers? Spoiler: absolutely not. After her death, a public autopsy, because Barnum never missed a chance for spectacle, even with a corpse, revealed she was likely no more than 80. Barnum, ever the showman, simply spun it as yet another layer of mystery, proving that his audience didn't just want to be fooled, they practically begged for it. And thus, the American entertainment industry was born, possibly from a fib about a very old lady. 22. Clifford Irving was a novelist with chutzpah the size of Texas. In the early 1970s, he convinced McGraw-Hill, a major publishing house, that he was secretly co-writing the autobiography of Howard Hughes, the eccentric, reclusive billionaire who hadn't been seen in public for years. Irving faked letters, forged signatures, and even conducted interviews with Hughes, aka talked to himself in a funny voice. He got a massive advance, a Time magazine cover, the works. It was the literary scoop of the century. Until Howard Hughes, from whatever germ-free bunker he was hiding in, emerged just long enough to hold a telephone press conference and declare, "I don't know this Irving cat from Adam." Irving's elaborate house of cards came crashing down, landing him in jail. But you have to admit, for a while there, he was living the dream. One fabricated anecdote at a time. 23. The Travels of Sir John Mandeville, a book that popped up in the 14th century, was basically the medieval equivalent of a really, really wild travel blog. This Sir John claimed to have journeyed to the far corners of the earth, encountering one-eyed giants, dog-headed men, lands where jewels grew on trees, and people who communicated exclusively through flatulence. Okay, maybe not that last one, but close. For centuries, it was considered a genuine travelogue, quoted by scholars, inspiring explorers like Columbus. The tiny detail? Sir John Mandeville probably never existed, and the book was a glorious mishmash of existing myths, legends, and outright fabrications, possibly written by a bored cleric with a very active imagination. It was the ultimate armchair adventure, proving that even in the Middle Ages, people loved a good story about a place they'd never, ever visit. 24. Oh, the Hitler Diaries. In 1983, the German magazine Stern dropped a bombshell. They had acquired the Führer's secret personal diaries. 60 volumes of intimate thoughts, doodles of tanks, and presumably complaints about his wallpaper. They paid millions. Historians were agog. It was the historical find of a lifetime. Until, oops. Experts quickly pointed out that the paper was too modern, the ink was wrong, the bindings were post-war, and Hitler's signature looked like it had been forged by a particularly clumsy spider. The diaries were the work of Konrad Kujau, a prolific forger of Nazi memorabilia with a talent for mimicking handwriting and an even greater talent for duping people. The Stern editors were left with egg on their faces and a very expensive pile of fake angst. A stark reminder to always check the stationery before you declare something a historical treasure. 25. Operation Mincemeat during World War II was a hoax so audacious, so brilliantly macabre, it sounds like something out of a spy novel written on a very strong cheese dream. The British needed to convince the Nazis that the Allies were going to invade Greece and Sardinia, not Sicily. Their plan? Get a corpse, dress him up as a Royal Marine officer, chain a briefcase full of fake, top-secret invasion plans to his wrist, and dump him off the coast of Spain where pro-German officials would find him. They even gave Major William Martin a backstory, complete with love letters and overdue bills in his pockets. And it worked. The Nazis bought it hook, line, and sinker, diverting troops away from Sicily. A dead body, some forged documents, and a lot of British stiff upper lip ingenuity arguably changed the course of the war. You can't make this stuff up. Well, they did, and it was genius. 26. For decades, Anna Anderson captivated the world with her claim. She was Anastasia Romanov, the youngest daughter of the last Russian Tsar, miraculously saved from the Bolshevik firing squad. She had the eyes, the mannerisms, the tragic aura. She convinced former Romanov courtiers, distant relatives, and a legion of romantic souls who wanted to believe in fairy tale survival. Legal battles raged for years as she sought recognition and a piece of the non-existent Romanov fortune. It was a drama fit for a Russian novel. Then came DNA testing in the 1990s. The verdict? Not Anastasia. She was likely Franziska Szankowska, a Polish factory worker with a history of mental illness. But for over 60 years, she lived the ultimate imposter life, proving that if your story is sad enough and your gaze haunted enough, people will rewrite history for you. 27. Edgar Allan Poe, master of the macabre and general literary weirdo, decided in 1844 that journalism needed a good shaking up. So he published a story in the New York Sun as a factual news report, detailing the incredible 3-day crossing of the Atlantic Ocean by a steering balloon named Victoria, piloted by famed aeronaut Monk Mason. The article was filled with precise and entirely fabricated technical details, dramatic accounts of the journey, and even a passenger list. New York went berserk. The news spread like wildfire. People celebrated this monumental achievement. Then, a couple of days later, the Sun sheepishly admitted it was all a hoax, penned by Poe for a bit of fun, and probably to sell a few more papers. Poe, a pioneer of fake news before it was cool. And you thought your Twitter feed was misleading? 28. In the 1930s, a fellow named Howard Horn discovered a treasure trove of historical documents in Pennsylvania known as the Horn Papers. These diaries, maps, and letters supposedly provided a rich, detailed account of early pioneer life in the region, previously unknown. Historians were thrilled. It was a goldmine of information. Except, it wasn't. Horn, it turned out, had a vivid imagination and a talent for creative writing. He'd fabricated the entire collection, even discovering the lead box containing them after a dream conveniently told him where to dig. It took years for scholars to meticulously debunk the papers, pointing out anachronisms and inconsistencies. Horn, to his dying day, insisted he was merely a conduit for historical truth, not a forger. Sure, Howard, and I'm the Queen of Sheba. 29. In the 1970s, thousands of bizarre clay figurines were discovered in Acambaro, Mexico. Tiny sculptures of humans riding dinosaurs like medieval knights with T-Rex mounts. Creationists screamed, "See, man lived with dinos." Scientists screamed back, "No." The figures were obviously modern, probably made in someone's backyard pottery class. But that didn't stop fringe theorists from including them in documentaries, books, and arguments on internet forums. If Jurassic Park was real, these people would have sued Spielberg for copyright infringement. 30. Ever heard of the English Mercury? It was long touted as the very first English newspaper, supposedly published in 1588 to report on the defeat of the Spanish Armada. Hot off the presses. Read all about it. Historians cited it. Textbooks included it. What a landmark in journalism. Except, it was as fake as a $3 bill. The entire newspaper was actually a literary hoax concocted in the 18th century by an antiquarian and his mates, probably over a few too many glasses of port. They meticulously crafted it to look and sound authentic, just for a laugh and to fool their fellow academics. It took a surprisingly long time for anyone to notice the suspiciously modern typeface, and the fact that, well, printing just didn't work quite like that in 1588. So, the oldest newspaper was actually just some very clever, very old-school trolling. 31. The Amityville Horror. Oh boy. In 1975, the Lutz family fled their new home in Amityville, New York, after just 28 days claiming it was possessed by demonic forces, green slime oozing from walls, swarms of flies in winter, Spooky Voices, a demonic pig named Jody. The story became a best-selling book and a blockbuster movie franchise. It was terrifying. It was mostly a load of hooey. Investigations and later admissions revealed that many of supernatural events were wildly exaggerated or outright fabricated by the Lutzes, possibly with the help of their lawyer, who saw a goldmine. While a real tragedy, a mass murder, had occurred in the house previously, the subsequent haunting narrative was largely a performance. The real horror? How many millions of dollars were made scaring the pants off people with a story that was more fiction than fact? 32. Friederike Hofe, the seeress of Prevorst, was a 19th century German woman who became a sensation for her supposed supernatural abilities. Confined to her bed by illness, she claimed to commune with spirits, predict the future, see into people's souls, and even speak in a magnetic inner language, composed of bizarre symbols and sounds. Physicians, poets, and philosophers flocked to witness her powers. She'd go into trances, describe visions, and generally put on a good show. Was she a genuine mystic? Or a very imaginative, possibly hysterical woman who knew how to work an audience? While her followers were convinced of her divine connection, modern skeptics suggest a potent cocktail of illness, suggestion, and perhaps a touch of theatricality. She was basically the 19th century equivalent of a really convincing psychic hotline operator, but with more fainting. 33. And finally, a modern classic to prove we haven't learned a thing. The Pacific Northwest tree octopus. In 1998, a website appeared detailing this amazing, endangered creature, Octopus paxarbalis, an amphibious octopus that lives in the temperate rainforests of Washington state, swinging through trees with its tentacles. The site had photos, clearly photoshopped, scientific information, and urgent calls for conservation. It was created as a media literacy test. And guess what? People fell for it. Hard. Teachers reported students writing impassioned essays to save the poor tree octopus. It became a go-to example of online gullibility, because, let's face it, an octopus in a tree is just plausible enough to be believable if you really want it to be. Bless the internet, and bless the enduring human capacity to believe absolutely anything if it's written down with a picture. So, after 33 hoaxes, one question remains. Were people just ridiculously gullible? Or are we still falling for the same tricks today, just with better lighting and Wi-Fi? Which of these hoaxes do you think was the most brain-meltingly stupid, or straight-up genius? And better yet, what's a modern hoax that you think future historians will laugh at the same way we're laughing now? Drop your wildest answers in the comments. I'm reading all of them. If this video made you laugh, gasp, or question the last 5 centuries of human decision-making, hit that like button and subscribe. We've got way more historical absurdity coming your way.